Rob, thanks very much indeed for stepping in and giving us your impressions of this report. Well, firstly, does this report go far enough? Does it hold water?
Evening. I think that this report we have only got a very small portion of it. We've got 9 or 10 pages, 11 pages, which is ridiculously scant detail. I don't think it goes far enough in terms of giving the investors and the public nearly enough information. And I think that questions should be asked by investors about why they haven't had greater detail at this point. So they have told us certain things, which is very important. I mean, they have told us, for example, that fictitious transactions amounting to 6.5 billion euros took place in Steinhoff's, or were in Steinhoff's accounts, and that will have to be restated and unraveled. But I think that we haven't really scratched the surface of what actually happened at Steinhoff in this report.
Yeah, and that means that we can't be any more wise about where the inflation of profits actually took place. The report says a small group of directors undertook various transactions, but does it point to anything more specific than that, those 10 pages that you talk about?
Well, we do know certain things. We do know that, for example, that there were off-balance sheet entities created in Europe, and that's essentially just a way of saying that there were these other companies quite far away that Steinhoff pretended was quite, independent of them and weren't related to them at all, but actually it was run by people close to the CEO, Markus Jooste. And these companies overseas, they did deals with Steinhoff, and that had the effect of inflating Steinhoff's assets and profits. So we do know certain things. For example, these companies in Switzerland did buy Steinhoff's trademarks. Now, it seems like a lot of those deals shouldn't have taken place and that the profits shouldn't have been recognized. So we do know certain specifics from this report or from various other investigations people have done. We don't have the specifics from this very short and abbreviated report at the moment. The full report, the way I understand it, runs to thousands of pages. So to give investors just 11 pages, as a summary is really, it's just not good enough.
It's interesting also that the report says quite explicitly that legal documents were created after transactions were entered into. And now you've mentioned this time and time again in some of the interviews you had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were certain things that happened. And the way I understand it, for example, one of the directors would say, I need confirmation of this deal that you want me to put through the accounts. And this legal document would appear. And he would say, okay, well, this looks legitimate. Where is the banking details of this? Where is the financial flows? And they were given that document too. And from what I now understand, some of those, those transactions and documents were forged, essentially. So it seems like there was quite a distinct pattern of fabricating a documentary trail that would facilitate these various transactions. And this led to, it's a massive story in South Africa because 70% or 60% of our pension funds in this country, of people who have pensions, were invested in Steinhoff. So it's a massive deceit on the entire country, not just the small group of Steinhoff investors that you know about.
Rob, so, in the small portion of this report that we have tonight, Markus Jooste not really zoned into, except, the fact that the report says he was not available for interviews.
No, that's one of the most conspicuous things in this shortened report is that they don't mention him by name. They talk of a senior Steinhoff executive. Now, I think it's clear to most people that means Markus Jooste, but it does indicate the way in which they were very wary of doing anything that could be construed as legally tricky for them. To not name Markus Jooste at this point in this investigation, in this document, is frankly ridiculous. I think that investors need far more than that. Because I think it's been evident from what was said in Parliament, for example, by the Steinhoff executives and Christo Wiese, the former chairman, that the person involved in many of these transactions was Markus Jooste. So the extent to which the lawyers must have sanitized this document is very clear from the fact that they almost couldn't bring themselves to mention Markus Jooste's name.
Moving on from that, Rob, the report was supposed to, there was a hope that the report would open doors for many other processes that would unfold after the release. But when you look at what you just said now about the way this was sort of sanitized, it just doesn't look like some of those processes will really come to unfolding. Well, at least soon.
I do think it definitely will happen. This won't be the last version they release. Steinhoff will have to release, a far longer executive summary at the very least. And what will happen is a lot of the investors have now lodged legal claims against Steinhoff. So as part of that, as part of those lawsuits, the investors who have lodged those legal claims will certainly subpoena the full report. So this is only it's the first step. I mean, the whole thing will definitely come out in a very short period of time, I'm sure.
Now, we just took a look at some of the market movements there, Rob. Frankfurt, the listing there, share up about 10% higher this afternoon. I suppose that's saying something about how this report is being digested, at least in that part of the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the JSE, I think it was down 2.1%. But at this point, it's very difficult to say how this is going to play into the results, which will be out in a couple of weeks. Because, you've got the legal claims, which will definitely happen as a result of this. Perhaps people expected wider damage than the 6.5 billion euros that is the fictitious transactions that have been detailed so far. So perhaps people expected wider damage, but I actually do think that, the accounts in a couple of weeks will certainly give us greater insight into the actual financial damage that will take place.
Financial Mail editor Rob Rose, thanks very much indeed for those insights this evening.